Today we're going to take a closer look at isosceles and equilateral triangles. So if I look at that triangle off to the right-hand side, I can see that AB and BC are marked with the little congruent marks. Those are the legs of the isosceles triangle, and the legs are always congruent. So AB is congruent to BC. So AB is congruent to BC. And the angle where the two legs intersect is called the vertex angle. So the angle up here at the top, this angle 1 that connects the two legs, that is your vertex angle. And then the two angles at the bottom where the legs come down and meet the third side, those are going to be called your base angles. So in this case, it's going to be angles 2 and angle 3. And the side across from the vertex is called your base. So the base is going to be AC. All right, so the isosceles triangle theorem says if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite those sides are congruent. So in other words, if AB is congruent to BC, then angle A is congruent to angle C. In other words, your base angles, the two angles that are on the base of the isosceles triangle, are going to be congruent. The converse of that says if two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite them are congruent. So in other words, if your base angles are congruent, then the legs are congruent. Now we're going to try some examples, and we're going to apply our knowledge of these sides and angles of the isosceles triangle. So if I look at number 1, we notice that it's an isosceles triangle because the legs are marked congruent. We want to know the two angles. So the base angles are going to be the same. So these two angles at the bottom on the base are going to be the same. So that means angle J is 68. And then you know a triangle adds up to 180. So 180 minus 68 tells you that angle K is 44. All right, number 2 is a little bit different. It gives you the vertex angle. All right, we need the two base angles. So the first thing I'm going to do is 180 minus 106, and I should get 74. And then I know that the two base angles are going to be exactly the same, and they have to add up to 74. So we're just going to take 74 divided by 2, and we get that both angles are going to be 37. All right, on number 3, all right, we want the vertex angle, so we want angle Y. So 180 minus 77 tells us the other angle is 26. And then since we know this is isosceles, we know that these two legs have to be the same. How do we know it's isosceles? Because the base angles were the same. So the other side there that we're looking for is 12 centimeters. All right, look at number 4. It says find the value of each variable. All right, so we know this triangle is isosceles. All right, it gives you the legs are congruent. So that means your two base angles, this angle and this angle, have to be congruent, which means equal. So we're just going to set this up as 5x plus 9 equals 8x minus 30. All right, from here we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. So you get 9 equals 3x minus 30. Add 30 to both sides, we get 39 equals 3x, and then you divide by 3, so you end up with x equals 13. Okay, on the next one, again, the legs are congruent. That means this is isosceles, so these base angles have to be congruent. That means we're going to set them equal to each other and solve. So once I set them equal to each other, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, and I'm going to get 7 equals 5x minus 33. Add 33 to both sides, we get 40 equals 5x, and then divide by 5, so we get x is 8. It does not ask us to plug it back in, so we're done. All right, number 6 tells you that the two base angles are congruent. That means that this triangle is isosceles. That means the legs have to be equal to each other. So I'm going to set them equal to each other, so 23x minus 17 equals 15x plus 7. All right, from here, subtract 15x from both sides, and you're going to get 8x minus 17 equals 7. Add 17 to both sides, we get 8x equals 24. Divide by 8, we end up with x equals 3. All right, on the next one, again, we notice it's isosceles because the base angles are congruent. So you're going to set the two legs congruent. So 9x minus 73 equals 3x plus 23. From here, we're going to subtract 3x from both sides, so we get 6x minus 73 equals 23. Add 73 to both sides, we get 6x equals 96. Divide by 6 and you end up with x equals 16. So far we learned that we can set the legs congruent if we know the base angles are congruent, or we can set the base angles congruent if we know the legs are congruent, like number 4 and 5. All right, so the next part we're going to have to actually draw the picture. So it's going to give us some information and we're going to have to draw the picture out for ourselves. So number 8 says in triangle RST, so we know we have a triangle that is labeled RST. It says that RT and ST are congruent. So RT and ST are congruent. It says the measure of angle R is 9x plus 2. So this is 9x plus 2. And the measure of angle S is 13x minus 18. All right, so R and S are going to be your base angles because they are on the base. So in other words, you have the two congruent legs, and then you have the other side, which is your base. So since those two angles are on the other side, they are the base angles. We know that this is isosceles because it gives us that the legs are congruent. So I'm going to set those two angles equal to each other. So 13x minus 18 equals 9x plus 2. Subtract 9x from both sides and we get 4x minus 18 equals 2. Add 18, 4x equals 20, and divide by 4, we get x equals 5. So that's the first thing we had to do. Now we have to plug it in. So if I go to find R, 9 times 5 is 45, plus 2 tells me that angle R is 47. Angle S, we're going to take 13 times 5 and then subtract 18, and we're also going to get 47. Now, angle T, it gave us that information in the equation there, 17 times 5 plus 1 is 86. Now, if I did it right, all three of those should add up to 180, and they do. Okay, on the next one, we're talking about triangle DEF. So again, we're going to draw out our triangle. We've got DEF. It tells us that angle D is congruent to angle E. And then it tells us that side DE is x plus 4. Side EF is 4x minus 8. And side DF is 7x minus 35. Okay, now here's the crucial part. So we know that D and E are our base angles. All right, so that means that DE is our base. It's the other two sides that are your legs that would be congruent. So it's these two sides that are going to be equal to each other. So 7x minus 35 has to be equal to 4x minus 8. So subtract 4x from both sides. We get 3x minus 35 equals negative 8. Add 35 to both sides and we get 3x equals 27. And divide by 3, you get x equals 9. So that is your first answer there. Now to find the pieces, we're just going to plug it back in. So DE is 9 plus 4, which is just going to be 13. EF is going to be 4 times 9, so 36, minus 8, which is 28. And DF, 7 times 9 is 63, minus 35 is also 28. Okay, last one of these. We've got triangle WXY. So WXY. It says WX is congruent to WY. It says angle W, so this angle right here, is x plus 6. Angle X is 5x minus 12. And angle Y is 7x minus 48. Okay, so here's the crucial part. We see that the two legs are WY and WX. That means this side is my base. So these two angles would be the base angles, and they are the ones that are congruent. So 7x minus 48 equals 5x minus 12. Subtract 5x from both sides, and you get 2x minus 48 equals negative 12. Add 48 to both sides, we get 2x equals 36. And then divide by 2, so you get x equals 18. So again, that's our first answer. Now to get the three angles, we've got to plug it in. So angle W is 18 plus 6, which is 24. 5 times 18 minus 12 gives us 78, so angle X is 78. And then 7 times 18 minus 48 gives us 78 as well. All right, that is isosceles triangles. So the legs are congruent and the base angles are congruent, and the base angles are on the base, which is the side that is not marked congruent. It is not one of the legs. So the next part is the equilateral triangles. So we talked a few days ago that if it's equilateral, it's equiangular, so that's kind of important to know. But we have a couple key parts here. It says a triangle is equilateral if and only if it is equiangular. So if angle A is equal to angle B, which is equal to angle C, then that means all three sides, AB, BC, and CA or AC, all have to be equal. And if I know that the three sides are equal, that basically means that the measure of angle A has to be equal to the measure of angle B, which has to be equal to the measure of angle C. So all three angles are going to be congruent and all three sides are going to be congruent. So let's look at number 11. All right, so in this picture, we have to find angle C. All right, so in this particular case, 180 minus 60 tells you angle C is 60. That means this triangle is equiangular, which means it is also equilateral, so all three sides have to be 9 feet. Okay, looking at the next one, it is marked equilateral. It's telling you that all three sides are exactly the same, which means all three angles have to be the same. 180 divided by 3 tells you that every angle here is 60. All right, so the last one's going to make you really work. All right, so we know in an equilateral triangle, all three angles are going to be equal to 60 degrees. So the first thing I'm going to do is solve for this x. So 7x minus 3 has to be 60 degrees. Add 3 to both sides, 7x equals 63. That means x equals 9. Okay, now as for the sides, I know all three of those are going to be equal. So I'm just going to choose 2 of them, and I'm going to set them equal to each other. So in this case, I'm just going to choose these 2 because the numbers look smaller. So 11y minus 23 equals 9y plus 1. Subtract 9y from both sides, we get 2y minus 23 equals 1. Add 23 to both sides, 2y equals 24, and we divide by 2, we get y equals 12. So the isosceles triangle has 2 sides, which are the legs, that are congruent, and it has 2 base angles that are congruent. And the equilateral triangle has all 3 angles congruent, which means they're all 60 degrees, and it has all 3 sides congruent. So you can use those properties to help you solve problems. Now you have a Google form for homework. It is only 10 points, and basically you get a point per correct answer. So if you get all 10 correct, you get a 10. If you get 9 correct, you get a 9. You can retake this as many times as you want, so make sure that if you do not score what you want, that you retake it. And I will see you guys when you come back to class.